Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a Boeing 737 pilot, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about that heated debate, Boeing versus Airbus. But before I'm actually going to start about it, of course I'm a Boeing pilot, so I have never actually flown an Airbus before, at least not a real one. I do have a couple hours on a simulated Airbuses, but let's keep it at that. So before making this video, and actually even long before, in the past couple of years, I have talked quite a lot with some of my colleagues at work about the what do you like about the Airbus question and which one do you actually like better. And I do have a lot of colleagues who have actually flown the Airbus for many, many years before they started flying the Boeing. So I got quite a couple of opinions there. And I'll start with the following question. None of them, not a single one, actually engaged in the what's better question, or in any of those this airplane is better because it got this philosophy question. That's something that I've so far only seen in flight simulation and on some YouTube pages. I mean, I'm joining those pages, or the ranks of those pages, with this very video, so here you are. Anyway, for real pilots, it doesn't really matter that much. In terms of flying the aircraft, in Flight Simulator you often hear, yeah, but you have that joystick in the Airbus and it's not a real thing to fly, it got all those computers and everything. The honest reaction to that is, true, you do have all those computers, but it still flies like any normal airplane. One of the first sentences in the AFCOM and in the flight crew training manual is, the Airbus flies like any other airplane. And that's exactly it. The only difference, of course, are the protections, which most of you pilots are never ever going to encounter in their lifetime, and that you don't have to trim the airplane. Alright, trimming. When we fly the 737, we have to trim it. Yes, that's true. Many of you flight simmers are saying that's the only true way of flying. No, that's not true. And to be totally honest, the trimming happens on a subconscious level. Once you have flown the 737 for a couple of sectors, you don't consciously have to trim the airplane anymore. You just do it without thinking about it, and by that time, it starts flying like an Airbus. It really does. That's exactly what most of my colleagues who have flown the Airbus for a long while have told me as well. Like, yeah, the airplanes fly pretty similar to one another. Only difference is you need to keep a little bit of aileron in the turn in order to keep your bank angle, as the 737 has a natural tendency to roll wings level again, while the Airbus is going to keep it automatically. Apart from that, it doesn't make a difference. Then moving on to the system's philosophies, the Airbus is a lot more automated, you need to press some buttons less. Yes, that's true. But still you need to check that the automation is doing what it's supposed to do. So after all, you are more or less checking the same systems as you are doing in the 737. And you have to keep in mind that even though they are different developers, or different manufacturers rather, their aircraft still follow the same physics. So they got fuel pumps, they got hydraulic pumps, they got flaps, they got packs, and it is all in all pretty similar, even though the Airbus does some of those things automated where you have to flick a switch in the Boeing. But let's be honest here, flicking those switches is more or less a no-brainer. It gives you a little bit more room for error, which is why my airline got a full page as a normal checklist, versus the Airbus maybe taking half a page. But even there I know other airlines flying the 737 with checklists of the same length as the Airbus checklists. So, what does that leave us with? Well, the one point that most of you flight simmers are actually not so aware of, which however in my opinion actually plays the biggest role at all when comparing those aircraft, is that after all the aircraft are workplaces. You are spending well over 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours every day in them. So let's look a little bit at those. The 737 is a rather cramped aircraft. There is that lovely saying that Boeing developed an excellent airplane and then they remembered they had to put pilots in it. And it's of course not that bad. However, in the 737 everything is a little bit cramped and there is not a lot of space in there. And of course you have that control column in between your legs, which means that your leg room is a little bit limited. And you have to be a bit careful with it as well when you want to get in and out of your seat. And last but not least, there it is. You knew it had to come in a video like this. The 737 does not have a table. What it does have is, for example, a flight plan holder, a technical logbook. No, of course not. We're not using that one. We never would. And many people are just bringing their own tablets. And in this case, I don't mean EFB tablets, but a normal tablet where you can put food on. Old-fashioned style. You're flying a 1960s airplane after all. So that is a little bit annoying in the Boeing, to put it that way. You're sitting in it for 10 hours at least a day, so you have to eat at some point. And you probably also have to fill out a flight plan if your airline is still using paper flight plans. So in terms of comfort, in terms of living in the airplane, which you effectively do, the Boeing has margins. Now, the Airbus got a lot more space for the pilots. You can move your legs a little bit more because you have some leg room. You have a proper table. And overall, the flight deck is just a lot bigger than the Boeing flight deck is. And in my opinion, that's a huge plus point for the Airbus compared to the Boeing. And in my opinion, that's the only valid plus point for the Airbus compared to the Boeing. All the systems, all the hand flying, everything like that, it really doesn't count because in the end you're doing the same thing, you're just doing it a different way. And yes, you gotta flick a couple more switches in the 737, but let's be honest here, that maybe takes half a second more to flick those 2 extra switches once you are used to your SOPs. You have to keep that in mind when you're considering it from a flight simmer's point of view. You guys don't fly those aircraft very often. You are probably reading it from a checklist while you're doing it. And of course then it is more work to fly a 737 than it is to fly an A320. But when you're used to the aircraft, when you're used to the procedure, it only takes a couple of seconds to do those flows, for which flight simmers sometimes take a whole minute. So then it really doesn't make much of a difference if you're flying the Boeing where you have to press 3 switches more than the Airbus. The big difference is the quality of life in the airplane. In the Airbus it's not as loud. In the 737 you really have to wear those headsets, otherwise you are going to lose some hearing capability over time. So it's not as loud. You got more space. You got that table, which is just a huge quality of life improvement. And in my opinion, those are the only valid reasons to say that the Airbus might be better than the Boeing. But nonetheless, I'm saying that as somebody who has not flown an Airbus before. So these are all things that all my colleagues who have flown the actual airplane are telling me. And all my system comparison is, of course, coming also from them, but also from my experience with the FS Labs and with the Phoenix Airbuses in the flight simulator. So let me know in the comments below. Have you thought about these lines of thought? What did you think previously? What are you thinking now? Have my theories made you change your opinion a little bit? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't done so yet, I would appreciate if you subscribe to the channel, maybe hit that small bell so that you are being notified about future videos. And if you really like the channel, I would appreciate a small donation using the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much for joining. I hope you found this interesting, and I'm looking very much forward to see you all on the next video.